The smell hits first. Smoke, thick, black, choking. A man stands on the roof of his three-story hotel, the finest in the entire state. Below him, a mob of thousands screams for his blood. Torches light up the night, like hell itself opened its gates. He's wearing a tailored suit, cost more than most men make in a year. His shoes, Italian leather. His watch, Swiss gold. This man owns 65 buildings, rental properties, a luxury hotel, a bus line, theaters, restaurants. His net worth? $60 million. In 1921, that's over $1 billion in today's money. And in less than 24 hours, every cent of it will be ash. His name is J.B. Stradford, and they're about to burn him out of history. Footsteps pound up the stairwell behind him. He turns. His wife grabs his arm. They're coming. He looks down at the street. Hundreds of white men, armed, organized, grinning. One throws a Molotov cocktail through the hotel's front window. The glass explodes. Flames swallow the lobby whole. You just witnessed the beginning of the Tulsa Race Massacre. But here's what they never told you. This wasn't just about a riot. This was about wealth. Massive, terrifying, undeniable black wealth. Wealth that threatened the entire power structure of America. And tonight, you're going to learn about 5 black families, 5 dynasties who built empires so vast, so powerful, so rich, that the system had no choice but to destroy them. Not just rob them, erase them. One by one, these families were burned, murdered, exiled, or written out of every history book you ever read. But not anymore. This is their story, and trust me, you're not ready for how deep this goes. Let's go back to 1921, Tulsa, Oklahoma, a neighborhood called Greenwood. You've probably heard it called Black Wall Street, but what you haven't heard is just how insanely wealthy it was. We're not talking about a few successful shops. We're talking about a fully functioning black economy, hospitals, banks, schools, newspapers, luxury hotels, movie theaters, private planes. Yes, private planes in 1921. 1 square mile, 35 blocks, over 10,000 black residents. And at the top of this empire, J.B. Stradford. Born in 1861, right in the middle of slavery, to 2 freed slaves in Kentucky. Most black children born that year didn't live past 5. J.B., he went to college. Not just any college, Oberlin College, one of the finest schools in America. Then he went to law school at Indiana University. He became a lawyer, then a real estate mogul, then one of the richest men in the entire Southwest. His hotel, the Stradford Hotel, had 54 rooms, a dining hall, a ballroom, and a billiard room. It was the largest black-owned hotel in the country. White businessmen stayed there. Politicians held meetings there. It was the crown jewel of black excellence. But here's the part that made white Tulsa nervous. J.B. Stradford wasn't quiet about his success. He didn't bow. He didn't shuffle. He didn't play the game. He walked through downtown Tulsa in 3-piece suits, tipping his hat to white women, shaking hands with white men like he was their equal. Because in wealth, he was. And that was unforgivable. Now here's where it gets darker. Because what happened next wasn't random. It wasn't a riot. It was planned. A coordinated attack. And it didn't start with anger. It started with envy. See, white Tulsa had been watching Greenwood for years, watching black families buy land, build businesses, get rich. They watched black kids go to better schools than white kids in poor neighborhoods. They watched black doctors, black lawyers, black pilots, and it made them sick. So they waited. All they needed was an excuse. And on May 31st, 1921, they got one. A young black man named Dick Rowland steps into an elevator. The operator is a white woman named Sarah Page. Nobody knows exactly what happened in that elevator. Some say he tripped, some say he stepped on her foot, but Sarah screamed. That's all it took. By the next morning, the Tulsa Tribune runs a headline, "Nab Negro for attacking girl in elevator." It's a lie, but it doesn't matter. White Tulsa doesn't need the truth, they need the excuse. By nightfall, a mob of over 2,000 white men surrounds the courthouse where Dick Rowland is being held. They're armed with guns, ropes, gasoline. They want to lynch him. A group of 75 black men, many of them World War I veterans, arrive to protect him. They're armed too. There's a standoff. Tensions rise. Then someone fires a shot. Nobody knows who, but it doesn't matter. Within minutes, the mob scatters. Not to go home, to go get more guns. And by dawn, they're back. Thousands of them, with rifles, shotguns, dynamite. And this time, they're not going to the courthouse. They're going to Greenwood. June 1st, 1921, 5 a.m. The sun isn't even up yet. A whistle blows. It's the signal. Thousands of white men pour into Greenwood like a flood. They don't knock on doors. They kick them in. Families are dragged out of their homes in their nightclothes. Men are shot in their front yards. Women are beaten in the streets. Children scream. And then the fires start. One by one, buildings are torched. Homes, churches, schools, businesses, everything. J.B. Stradford's hotel? Burned to the ground. His bus line? Destroyed. His rental properties? Ashes. But it gets worse, because the mob wasn't just on the ground. Private planes, yes, planes, flew over Greenwood and dropped firebombs. Literal bombs, dropped from the sky, onto a residential neighborhood. This was the first aerial bombing of an American city, and it was done to black people, by white Americans, on American soil. By the time the sun set, 35 blocks were gone, over 1,200 homes destroyed, hospitals, schools, churches obliterated. Official death toll, 36. But here's the truth they buried. Eyewitnesses reported bodies being dumped into mass graves, bodies loaded onto trains and shipped out of the city, bodies thrown into the Arkansas River. The real number, likely over 300. And here's the most evil part. Because after it was over, the city didn't help rebuild. They passed laws making it illegal for black residents to rebuild without permits. Permits they refused to give. Insurance companies refused to pay out. The city seized the land and sold it to white developers. J.B. Stradford, he fled to Chicago with nothing but the clothes on his back. He was charged with inciting a riot. For defending his own business, he never returned. He died in exile. And for over 81 years, this story was erased. Schools didn't teach it. Textbooks didn't mention it. Tulsa pretended it never happened. Until survivors started talking. Until mass graves were found. Until the truth couldn't be buried anymore. But J.B. Stradford's story, it's just the beginning. Because this wasn't the first time a black dynasty was erased. And it damn sure wasn't the last. Let me take you further back, way back, to a time when black wealth wasn't just big, it was royal. The island of Haiti, a revolution just ended, not just any revolution, the only successful slave revolt in human history. Enslaved Africans rose up, defeated the French army, and declared independence. And at the center of it all, a man named Christophe, born into slavery, fought in the American Revolution as a teenager, then returned to Haiti and helped lead the rebellion. By 1811, he declared himself King of Haiti, King Henri I. And here's what they don't tell you. This man built a kingdom, an actual kingdom, with a palace, a standing army, a thriving economy, and a currency backed by gold. He built the Citadelle La Ferrière, a massive fortress on a mountaintop. It's still standing today. It's the largest fortress in the Americas. Took 20,000 workers, 15 years to build. It was designed to withstand a French invasion. Walls 13 feet thick, 365 cannons, stocked with food and water to last a year. This wasn't symbolic. This was preparation, because King Christophe knew the world wasn't going to let a black kingdom exist in peace. And he was right. France demanded reparations. Yes, you read that right. Haiti, the nation of formerly enslaved people, was forced to pay France for the loss of their slaves. Themselves. They were forced to pay for their own freedom. 150 million francs. That's over $21 billion in today's money. It took Haiti 122 years to pay it off, and it destroyed their economy. But even under that pressure, King Christophe thrived. He created a nobility system with dukes, counts, and barons, all black. He built schools, libraries, and printing presses. He banned the use of whips. He made education mandatory for children. He created a legal code that guaranteed rights for all citizens. This was a black king running a black nation with wealth, power, and dignity. But the world couldn't let it stand. France blockaded Haiti's ports. America refused to recognize Haiti as a nation for 60 years. The Vatican refused to acknowledge the kingdom. King Christophe faced rebellions, betrayals, and constant threats. In 1820, he suffered a stroke. Realizing his enemies were closing in, he chose to die on his own terms. He shot himself in the heart with a silver bullet. His kingdom fell apart within months. And here's the part that should make you furious. History barely remembers him. Most people have never heard his name, but they know Napoleon, they know King Louis, they know every European monarch who built empires on stolen land and enslaved labor. But a black king who built a free nation from the ashes of slavery? Erased. Now let me ask you something. Why do you think these stories were hidden? Why do you think you never learned about King Christophe in school? Or J.B. Stradford? It's not an accident. It's not an oversight. It's deliberate. Because if people knew that black families built kingdoms, if they knew black businessmen became billionaires despite slavery, if they knew black dynasties rivaled European empires, then the lie falls apart. The lie that black people needed to be civilized. The lie that we were ever less than. But we're not done, because there's a dynasty even older, even richer, and even more erased. Let's go back to 1482, Central Africa. Portuguese explorers arrive at the mouth of the Congo River. They expect to find savages. Instead, they find a kingdom, the Kingdom of Kongo, a centralized state with a king, a capital city, a functioning government, and a thriving economy. The capital city, Mbanza, Congo, had a population of over 100,000 people. That's bigger than London at the time. It had paved roads, markets filled with gold, ivory, copper, and textiles, a royal court with advisors, governors, and diplomats. And at the center, Mane Kongo, the King of Congo, the most powerful monarch in Central Africa. The Portuguese were stunned. They expected primitives. They found equals. King Nzinga Nkuwu ruled when the Portuguese arrived. His son, Alfonso I, took the throne in 1509. And here's where it gets fascinating. Alfonso converted to Christianity, not because he was conquered, because he saw an opportunity. He learned Portuguese. He learned Latin. He corresponded with the Pope and the King of Portugal as an equal. He sent his son to study in Europe. He built churches, schools, and trade networks. He believed in diplomacy. He believed in partnership. But the Portuguese had other plans. They didn't want a partner. They wanted slaves. And when Afonso resisted, they ignored him. Portuguese traders began raiding Congolese villages. They kidnapped people, branded them, shipped them to Brazil. Afonso wrote letters to the King of Portugal, begging him to stop. He wrote, "It is our will that in these kingdoms there should not be any trade of slaves, nor outlet for them." The Portuguese ignored him. They kept raiding, they kept enslaving, and they kept getting richer. By the time Afonso died in 1542, the Kingdom of Kongo was fracturing. Portuguese interference had destabilized the region. Rival factions fought for power. The kingdom collapsed into civil war. And by the 1600s, the once mighty Kingdom of Kongo was a shadow of itself. Millions of its people had been enslaved and shipped across the Atlantic. Its wealth, its gold, its ivory, its art, stolen. Its history, its kings, its achievements, its glory, erased. Today, most people don't even know the Kingdom of Kongo existed. They think Africa was just tribes. They think there were no kingdoms, no governments, no civilization. But that's a lie. And it was told on purpose. Now let's talk about a family that played a darker role. Because not every black dynasty was destroyed by white hands. Some were destroyed by collaboration. Meet the de Souza family. Francisco Felix de Souza, born in Brazil in 1754, of mixed African and Portuguese descent. He arrived in Huaida, Benin, in the late 1700s, and he saw an opportunity. The transatlantic slave trade was booming. European ships needed suppliers. African kingdoms were at war, taking prisoners. Francisco became the middleman. He built a slave trading empire. He became known as Chacha, the viceroy of Huaida. He owned factories, warehouses, and ports. He had a private army. He lived in a mansion with over 50 rooms. He had multiple wives and over 100 children. At his peak, he was shipping thousands of enslaved Africans to Brazil every year. He made a fortune, millions of dollars in today's money. But here's the twist. Francisco was also black, or at least part black. And that complicates the story, because the narrative we've been taught is simple. White people enslaved black people. But the truth? The truth is messier. Some Africans participated. Some grew wealthy from it. And Francisco de Souza was one of them. But here's what happened next. By the mid-1800s, the transatlantic slave trade was ending. Britain banned it in 1807. America banned it in 1808. Brazil held out until 1850. And when the trade ended, so did the de Souza fortune. The family lost its power, its wealth, its influence. The mansion fell into ruin. The descendants of Francisco de Souza scattered. Some stayed in Benin, some returned to Brazil. But the family never recovered. And here's the cruel irony. The same system that made them rich, it destroyed them. Because when the slave trade ended, the European powers didn't need middlemen anymore. They colonized Africa directly. They took the land, the resources, the wealth. And families like the de Souzas, they were tossed aside, forgotten, erased. Today, the de Souza mansion is a museum, a reminder of a dark chapter in history, a chapter most people don't want to talk about, because it complicates the narrative. But it's part of the story, and it needs to be told. You still with me? Because we've covered a lot. A billionaire burned out of his empire in Tulsa, a black king who built a fortress to defend black freedom, an African kingdom destroyed by the slave trade, and a slave-trading dynasty that rose and fell with the very system it profited from. But there's one more family, and this one might be the most tragic of all, because this family didn't just lose their wealth, they lost their lives. And their story was buried so deep that most historians don't even know it exists. Let's go back to 1860, Mobile, Alabama. A white plantation owner named Timothy Mear makes a bet. He bets his friends that he can smuggle a ship full of enslaved Africans into the United States, even though it's been illegal for over 50 years. He commissions a ship called the Clotilda. It sails to West Africa, Dahomey, modern-day Benin. The crew raids a village. They kidnap 110 people, men, women, children. They chain them in the hull of the ship, and they sail back to Alabama. When they arrive, they know they've broken the law, so they burn the ship. They sink it in the Mobile River. They hide the evidence, and they sell the 110 Africans into slavery. Among them, a young man named Kudjo Kazula Lewis. His real name was Oluwale Kasola. He was 19 years old. He was the son of a wealthy family in West Africa. His father was a trader. His family owned land. They had livestock. Status. In one night, all of it was gone. He was kidnapped, chained, shipped across the ocean, and sold. 5 years later, the Civil War ended. Slavery was abolished. Kudjo was free. But freedom didn't mean wealth. It didn't mean power. It didn't even mean safety. Kudjo and the other Clotilda survivors were stranded. They couldn't go home. They didn't speak English. They had no money, no land, no resources. So, they did something incredible. They built their own community. They pooled their money. They bought land. They founded a town called Africatown. They built homes, churches, schools. They recreated their culture. They spoke their native languages. They preserved their traditions. They refused to be erased. And for a while, it worked. Africatown thrived. But America wasn't done with them. In the 1900s, industrial plants moved in. Chemical factories, paper mills, refineries. They polluted the air, the water, the soil. Cancer rates skyrocketed. Life expectancy plummeted. The people of Africatown fought back, but they were ignored. The industries were white-owned. The government didn't care. Africatown was slowly poisoned. And Kudjo, he lived to be 94 years old. He was the last living survivor of the Clotilda. He told his story to a writer named Zora Neale Hurston in 1927. She published his words in a book called Barracoon, but the book wasn't published until 2018, 91 years later, because nobody wanted to hear his story. Nobody wanted to acknowledge the Clotilda or Africatown, or the fact that slavery continued illegally for decades. Kudjo died in 1935. He was buried in a simple grave, no monument, no recognition, just a footnote in history. But here's the miracle. In 2019, the wreckage of the Clotilda was found, buried in the mud of the Mobile River, exactly where Timothy Mear had sunk it 159 years earlier. The evidence was real. The story was real. And suddenly, people started paying attention. Africatown is still there. The descendants of the Clotilda survivors still live there. And they're still fighting. Fighting for clean air, clean water, reparations. Fighting to be seen. Fighting to be heard. Fighting to not be erased. So, let's zoom out. Let's connect the dots. We've talked about 5 families, 5 dynasties. J.B. Stradford, a billionaire burned out of Tulsa. King Christophe, a monarch who built a fortress to defend black freedom. The Kingdom of Kongo, a civilization erased by the slave trade. The de Souza family, a dynasty that profited from and was destroyed by the same system. And Kudjo Kazula Lewis, a survivor who built a town from nothing, only to watch it be poisoned. 5 different stories, 5 different outcomes. But one common thread: erasure. Because here's the truth they never wanted you to know. Black wealth has always existed. Black kingdoms have always existed. Black excellence has always existed. But it's been systematically destroyed. Not by accident, not by coincidence, by design. Every time black people built something, it was burned down. Every time black people gained power, it was taken away. Every time black people told their story, it was silenced. Because the system couldn't let it stand. Because if black people knew their true history, if they knew they came from kings and queens, if they knew they built empires and dynasties, if they knew they were billionaires before the word even existed, then the lie collapses. The lie that black people are inferior. The lie that black people need to be saved. The lie that black people don't deserve reparations because they never had anything to begin with. That's the lie. And that's why these stories were buried. But here's the thing. You can't bury the truth forever. You can burn the buildings. You can kill the people. You can erase the names from the textbooks. But the truth has a way of rising. Today, the descendants of the Tulsa Massacre survivors are suing for reparations. Today, the Citadel La Ferrière in Haiti is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Today, archaeologists are uncovering the history of the Kingdom of Kongo. Today, the wreckage of the Clotilda sits in a museum, a testament to the horrors of slavery. Today, Africatown is fighting for justice. And today, you know their names. You know their stories. You know the truth. And that's power. Because once you know, you can't unknow. Once you see, you can't unsee. And once you understand the depth of the erasure, you start to understand the depth of the excellence that was erased. So here's what I want you to take away from this story. The next time someone tells you that black people came from nothing, remember J.B. Stradford. The next time someone tells you that Africa had no civilization, remember the Kingdom of Kongo. The next time someone tells you that black people don't know how to build wealth, remember King Christophe. The next time someone tells you that slavery was a long time ago and has no impact today, remember Kudjo Kazula Lewis and the people of Africatown still fighting for clean water. Because these stories aren't just history, they're proof. Proof that black excellence is not new. Proof that black wealth is not a fluke. Proof that black power is not a myth. It's been here all along. They just didn't want you to know. But now you do. And the erasure ends now. If this story moved you, share it. If this truth angered you, speak it. If this history shocked you, teach it. Because the only way we stop the erasure is by refusing to forget. Drop a comment with the name of one family you'd never heard of before. Hit that like button if you want more hidden history. And subscribe because we're just getting started. The truth is coming, and it can't be stopped.